What happened to the 10 pirate lords from the Four Oceans War after the events of Swords and Sandals Pirates? This game is the earliest in the timeline of any Swords and Sandals game, and it also introduces us to the first major naval war that happened in Brander before the land one in Crusader. In the year 586 CM, Fader, the major ruling power in Brander, lost control of the seas due to a catastrophic disaster that destroyed 95% of its fleet. This caused many factions, new and old, in a race and open naval war for land and treasure. Although this war lasted less than 100 days, it laid the foundations for many upcoming factions and characters from the series in the long run. The Four Oceans War set a precedent that the Kingdom of Fader's grasp on the realm is not unbreakable, which paved the way for many to bide their time waiting for the next big opportunity to wage war in the realms. Today, however, we will focus on the 10 pirate captains during the Four Oceans War and what happened to them after it ended. There are 5 characters from this list who are well known in the Swords and Sandals series and continue to appear in many of the previous and future games, and 5 characters who were introduced for the first time in the Swords and Sandals Pirates game. Because the stories of the 5 well-known characters are continued in other games of the series, I will start with them first and then talk about the new and less known characters. Let's start with a fan favorite, Baron Wolfkang, who leads the forces of Arglaxx in their naval conquest for riches, power, and trade goods. The poor son of a historian from a small town rescued a highborn lady and was granted the title of Baron to lead the naval fleet of the Free States of Arglaxx at just 16. The Free States of Arglaxx were very successful in bringing new riches and trade, but after the naval war ended, Wolfkang would fall to boredom and depression, so without purpose he started drinking. It became so bad that he failed both in his political relations as well as his personal ones, which cost him his title, and he was exiled from Arglaxx. He then traveled to the arena at Doomtrek and fought as a gladiator due to his skillful swordsmanship while getting drunk most nights. One day, after almost dying in the arena, he was visited by his childhood friend Sir Belgrave, who saw how broken Wolfkang was and talked sense into him and took him to the city of Dracondir, where he became sober again and eventually found a purpose in life. He would go on to lead the Free States of Arglaxx during the Crusades and become one of the 3 defenders of Brandor. He is still alive in the series, retired and old with his family by his side. Arglaxx is a recurring villain in the Swords and Sandals series, whose story also starts in the Swords and Sandals Pirates game. The backstory of this character is very mysterious and not much is known about him. He comes from another world of giant beastmen and traveled to Tritonia through the constellation mirror. Since the mirror opens once every 50 years, and the year of Swords and Sandals Pirates is 586, this means he likely came to the planet in 550 CM, although his age is not known. Because he comes from a planet of giant beastmen, he has the ability to control or enthrall animals in ways that no one else can, which explains how he transformed them from a loose collection of tribes to a fearsome legion under his banner. After the Four Oceans War, Arglaxx and his naval fleet spent months traveling from island to island, eating, conquering and hunting islanders until they were eventually struck with jungle madness and Arglaxx was forced to flee. He left his simian forces and traveled to the island of Doomtrek, where he eventually became the arena overlord due to a secret alliance he had made with Antarus during the Four Oceans War. In the months that followed, he diligently sought out and evaluated candidates to serve as the new generals for Antarus' expanding undead legions. In exchange, the Emperor's southern armies launched assaults on the remaining Takashi fortresses scattered around the desert, softening them up in anticipation of Arglax's mainland invasion. Fueled by the riches gained from their war at sea, the Simian forces once again swelled in strength, readying themselves for their next grand campaign. His story continues in Swords and Sandals 2, Crusaders, and Swords and Sandals 3, where he finally gets mortally wounded during an arena fight. The Beast Force remains active to this day, although severely diminished and not a looming threat like it was during Arglax's time. Sir Belgrave's story is long and full of honor and adventures. His career started in the Four Oceans War as captain of the fleet for the Templar Church at the age of 17 and already a knight. Sir Belgrave marched a sizable army westward toward the seas to support King Lionel in claiming control of the Four Oceans on behalf of both Fader and Dracondir. Following the War of the Four Oceans, the Templar Church amassed immense wealth from the ocean's spoils, and Belgrave felt he had earned a period of rest and tranquility far from the horrors of war. But fate had other plans. Only months after arriving back in Brander, Belgrave and a group of devoted knights were dispatched on a mission to the northern wilds, tasked with converting the barbarian tribes to the faith of Sul. Though they encountered fierce opposition, Belgrave's unwavering faith and formidable skill with the blade brought both martial and spiritual victories, allowing the teachings of Sul to spread across the rugged frontier. With triumphs both on land and sea, the accomplished Sir Belgrave was elevated to the highest ranks within the Templar Church. He then went on a highly secretive mission to investigate troubling rumors about his old adversary from the Four Oceans War, Antarus, who now claimed the title of Emperor and was reportedly allied with the dark figure known as the Malevolence. Sir Belgrave's story continues in Swords and Sandals 2, where he helps the Nameless and Bargo to stop Emperor Antarus' plans to take over Brandor. Then in Swords and Sandals 5, where he is Lord of the Templar Church and launches a campaign to stop Hikos from becoming a global threat and conquering Brandor. He dies somewhere between 635 and 640 CM. Speaking of the devil himself, Antarus seeks to obtain riches and land during the naval struggle in Brandor so he can use it for his master plan to eventually conquering Brandor, but his secret main purpose during the Four Oceans War is to find the rumored elixir of life, which would grant him both immortality and his flesh back, which he had lost because of overusing his necromancy ability by raising a force of undead skeletons after he formed the Death Imperium. He is not yet the powerhouse he becomes in future Swords and Sandals games, and is more or less just one of the 10 pirate lords trying to grab as much riches and power from the Naval War as possible. After the events of the Four Oceans War, Antarus gathered the vast trove of treasure he had acclaimed during the Oceanic War and set sail for the fabled arena island of Doomtrek. There, through charm, deception and treachery, he won the trust of his former rival Hikos of Edingard, only to betray and enslave him, claiming dominion over the arena and its stationed legions. Crowning himself Emperor of Doomtrek, Antarus poured his newfound wealth into creating a grand tournament, luring the world's greatest warriors with promises of glory and renown. This led to the events of Swords and Sandals 2, Emperor's Reign, and we know how that story turned out. Antarus' story is long and he keeps returning to Brandor one way or another, but that is a tale for another video. A new force emerged from the murky swamps of southwestern Brandor. Disillusioned, young followers flocked to the cause of a wild-eyed magnetic figure known as Hikos of Edingard, previously named Hector Carolus. His newly assembled armies, clad in flamboyant uniforms and sweeping purple cloaks, gathered in strength and set their sights on the coast. Drawn by promises of wealth and dominion, the so-called Legion of Age launched their bid for control over the waters of Tritonia. Their commander, Hikos, was a silver-tongued madman, capable of steering oratory one moment and violent fury the next. With Hikos steering the course, the Legion became a volatile and formidable presence of the open seas. Although he conquered many islands and obtained riches during his time in the Four Oceans War, Hikos, upon returning to Edingard, spiraled into madness, plagued by nightmares and speaking only in rhyme, frustrating his advisors. Neglecting to secure his conquered islands, they were quickly overthrown. The Legion's naval power dwindled. Still recruiting the lost and desperate with promises of wealth, he poured fortunes into building an extravagant arena on Doomtrek. But soon he was overthrown by Emperor Antarus, enslaved and forced to fight as a champion in his own arena. He was eventually freed by his loyalists, and he turned his fury into his childhood foes, Wolfgang, King Lionel and Sir Belgrave, unleashing chaos in Brandor during the Crusades and beyond. Even though almost everybody else from his time are now dead or very old, he is still strong and youthful because of his connection to the Void of Madness, which has granted him his unnatural long life. His last appearance in the timeline is at 635 CM when he tries to take over Brandor by resurrecting Antarus with the intention of stealing his power. That plan is foiled by the Grail hero and Lord Belgrave, after which Hikos is imprisoned. Just 5 years later, however, during the events of Swords and Sandals Immortals, he is apparently no longer in custody and nobody knows where he is. The next 5 characters are less known from the lore, however no less important than the previous ones, as they all have a role to play in the grand scheme of things. Some had happy endings, some don't. Once the dominant naval force in all of Brandor, the Kingdom of Phaedor suffered a devastating blow when violent ocean storms shattered 95% of its fleets. Much of the once mighty navy now lay wrecked along Brandor's west coast, and their island territories, free from royal control, descended into chaos and rebellion. Determined to restore his kingdom's former glory, King Lionel IX turned to Sir David Robinson, a valiant knight and Phaedor's most accomplished admiral. Charged with reviving Phaedor's supremacy on the seas, Robinson set course to return Phaedor to its lost territories and power over the realm. He knew the mission's importance, for many across the realm hoped to see Phaedor's strength washed away for good. The Four Oceans War marked the end of Admiral Robinson's legendary naval career. A fateful encounter with the enigmatic Antarus shook him to his core, leaving him visibly unsettled for hours. Confronted with the rise of dark forces across the world, Robinson understood that his era was drawing to a close. Although Phaedor ended up controlling the Four Oceans at the end of the Naval War, it was not because they won, but due to Bargo intervening and deciding that this kingdom is the most suited to rule, for now. At the age of 82, the revered admiral finally stepped down, having sailed more than 70,000 leagues across the Tritonian oceans. Although greeted as a hero upon his return to Castle Cavaldar, peace eluded him. When the Crusades erupted, he was soon called back into service. With unmatched experience in naval warfare against the Death Imperium, Robinson became a key advisor to King Lionel until his death. Many of the strategic victories that halted Antarus were credited to his wisdom and guidance. Though he didn't live to witness the Crusaders' conclusion, Admiral Robinson died peacefully, remembered by all as the most esteemed naval hero in Phaedor's history. To the north of Fader, the Iron Republic had steadily risen in strength following a dramatic military coup that led to its secession from the kingdom just 2 years prior. Florian DuPont, Marie DuPont's father, played a key role in developing the Republic's naval forces. After his passing that winter, Marie took up his mantle as the Iron Admiral. Until now, the Republic had avoided direct confrontation with Fader's authority, but with the kingdom's mighty navy now destroyed, the opportunity to act had arrived. If they could seize control of the seas from Fader, they would soon possess the means to launch an invasion, topple the king, and shatter the crown's reign for good. Marie DuPont returned after the war bearing immense riches and valuable resources, but soon found herself locked in a power struggle with her half-brother, Lord Selen Helmgard. Once a trusted ally of King Lionel and a key figure in the Iron Republic's breakaway, Helmgard was known for his ruthlessness and paranoia, even toward his own kin. Just months after Marie's return from the Four Oceans War, the Council named her Chancellor of the Republic. Her first decree as Chancellor was to demand that Selen surrender his private militia to the Republic's command. When he refused, she ordered his brief imprisonment in a tower. Though he was released within weeks, the damage was done. Selen harbored a deep, lasting grudge towards his sister that would never be let go. On a cold winter's night, 2 years after the war's conclusion, Selen shoved Marie from the highest rampart of her stronghold. She died from the fall, and power swiftly passed to Lord Helmgard, who would later lead the Republic during the Crusades. Marie was only 43, but this, however, is not where her story ends. After her death, she came back to the world of the living as a leech, haunting the halls of Gallowstone Keep until her brother's death freed her. After that, she fought as a Grand Champion at Doomtrek, to return to the Pale Shroud and eternal rest. Senator Gralex and the Putian Armada are Cycladians, a race of towering one-eyed giants who emerged through the constellation mirror years ago, fleeing from an unspoken horror that destroyed their planet. Legends speak of Cycladia as a temptatious water world, filled with violent storms and endless seas, a world where its inhabitants, over countless generations, mastered the ways of the ocean. Now exiles in an unfamiliar realm, the Cycladians found refuge along the wild and rocky shores of the Putian coast. There, they began charting the waters of Tritonia, determined to begin anew. Under the calm and resolute guidance of their leader, Gralex, they set sail, driven by a vision to remake the islands of Tritonia in the image of their long-lost oceanic world. Following the end of the Four Oceans War, Gralex returned to the wind-beaten inlets of Putia, armed with riches and deep understanding of these once alien waters. He and his people began constructing an even greater Putian armada. The Cycladians, known for their tireless craftsmanship, forged colossal vessels, oceanic giants built to endure months at sea, with towering skills and unyielding masts. Maps that were once bare grew rich with detail, and a course westward was finally marked. For the Cycladians still dreamed of a homeland they could truly call their own. The armada sailed west into the unknown, chasing whispers of the mythical continent of Segalis. A handful of Cycladians remained, but from that day forward, their presence in Brandor became a rare and almost mythical sight. Though many believe Gralex and the armada never reached Segalis, there remains hope that one day the tale of these valiant wanderers from another world will at last be told. Olaf the Unhinged and his tribes are barbarians from the desolate reaches of Etania. At their head was the monstrous warrior Olaf, dubbed the Unhinged, a towering berserker with no regard for law or mercy. As they surged toward the sea, they torched every village and outpost in their path, leveling forests to craft massive vessels of war. Their society was one of cruelty and blood, where meat was swelled from skulls and bodies were marked with the livelihood of their foes. These warriors lived only for violence and chaos, setting their sights on the kingdom of Fader. But to wage such a campaign, they needed supplies, and the rich waters of Tritonia offered plenty of pillage. Olaf and his bloodthirsty followers ravaged and scattered whole islands of the Four Oceans, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Fortresses tumbled into the sea, fleets were burned to splinters, and mighty nations crumbled beneath the weight of his onslaught. Yet the same scorched earth tactics that brought Olaf such fearsome success would eventually lead to his downfall. The spoils gathered during the war, gold, treasures, and plunder, vanished quickly when they reached the shores of Brandor, squandered in drinking halls, pleasure houses, and blood-soaked arenas. With resources depleted, tensions flared among the tribes, and their fragile alliance collapsed. When they returned to Etania, they were no richer or stronger than when they first set sail. Within a year of the campaign's end, Olaf's rule came to a violent halt after launching an attack on the neighboring realm of Gunteria. In a brutal clash, the Etanian clans were broken and Olaf was slain by a rising warrior chief, Bors the Mighty. Bors would go on to unite the scattered clans under a new banner, the Sons of the Frost, a fearsome new force that would soon become a relentless enemy of the Kingdom of Fader during the Crusades to come. The coastal city of Sharpsdale, tucked into a wide cove along Brander's southeastern edge, had long been a refuge for outlaws, privateers, and black marketeers. Operating beyond the reach of Fader's authority, the city flourished in secrecy and scheming, controlled by the influential Sharpsdale Trading Company, a coalition of ambitious merchants, traders, and enterprises seeking wealth through any means, legal or otherwise. At its helm was Jane Threesheets, a former rising star in Braxian politics. Her obsession with riches and rare treasuries eventually led her to betray the Free States and go rogue. Fleeing to Sharpsdale, she climbed the ranks and ultimately declared herself Pirate Queen. From her fortified island base at Cauldron Bay, Jane led the trading company on a ruthless campaign of plunder across the Tritonian oceans, particularly when Braxian vessels crossed her path. As the Four Oceans War drew to a close, many naval leaders made their way back to Brander, exhausted and longing for home. Jane Threesheets, however, remained at sea, drawn by its endless call and unwilling to give it up. The war had seen islands won and lost in savage conflict, but Jane's legend only grew. Stories spread like wildfire of a daring captain who battled atop shipmasts, a bottle in one hand and a blade in the other. From rowdy ports to quiet harbors, sailors swapped tales of her unmatched skill, an unruly yet brilliant seafarer who could guide her ship through even the fiercest storms and blackest waters. Riding the wave of her fame, Jane amassed an even larger fleet, gradually reclaiming the very islands once held by rival commanders. Key island bastions that once belonged to Fader, Braxis, and the Iron Republic fell into her hands, cutting off their supply routes. Soon, the rich spoils of Tritonia's oceans were hers to take without challenge. Eventually, having grown tired of conquest, Jane vanished into retirement, living in luxury on a remote, uncharted island with more wealth than she had ever imagined. She hasn't been seen since, but the legend of the Pirate Queen continues to echo across the seas. This is one of the very few characters in the entire Swords and Sandals universe who got a happy ending and survived. In Swords and Sandals Pirates, each captain is playable and their true ending only appears after you win the game by using them. They also have a bad ending if you fail to win with them, but that is not a canon one. This creates more questions like which ending is the most canon and real one out of all of them? Are all of them real or none of them are? Who actually won the Four Oceans War in the end? The Four Oceans War lasted only 3 months after Bargo intervened and summoned every pirate lord to his tower in the island of Kragenbach. He used his powerful magic and reasoning skills to force them all to declare truce and decreed that control of the oceans would fall on the Kingdom of Fader once again, since they were the most fit and capable of ruling the realms in the most democratic and least bloodthirsty way, compared to everybody else at least. The reason Bargo did all of this was because he was afraid that if Brander's best forces are all gone fighting somewhere else between each other for too long, the continent itself would be exposed to otherworldly attacks like from the Constellation Mirror, which was set to open in 14 years' time. Remember that the CM opens once every 50 years and the year during Pirates is 586 CM, so the Kingdom of Fader officially won the Four Oceans War, though it was more of a technicality win since Bargo decided they should rule because of their good virtue and not because they were winning the war. I personally don't think Fader would have won the war, but that is a subject for another day. So, which ending is canon? All of the true endings for each character are canon to the lore, since it depicts each of them going on their separate ways after the war is over. In the end, the Four Oceans War aims to reveal a lot of backstory and to answer how some characters ended up where they are in the other games that are set after the timeline of this one, like how Baron Wolfkang ends up fighting in Doomtrek as a gladiator in Swords and Sandals 1, how Hikos uses his riches to buy Doomtrek and build the arena there, also in Swords and Sandals 1, how Arglaxx and Antarus first met and made a secret alliance with each other, how Belgrave's lengthy and legendary career started, how Boros the Mighty became leader of Sons of the Frost and uniting all the tribes under one rule, and other characters who were introduced for the first time in this game, though for some it was the last time as well.